Learn Japanese history.
We are your navigators, Taro and Hanako.
Welcome. If you're joining us as an overseas university student, maybe just starting to get into Japanese history, well, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
We're doing a deep dive today into a really dynamic time, the Azuchi-Momoyama period.
That's right. Think late 16th century. It's this intense period bridging the chaos of the Warring States era and the more stable times that followed. It's all about unification.
Yeah, the old Ashikaga shogunate had pretty much faded away by then, right?
Completely. Real power was scattered among these powerful regional lords, the daimyo, constantly fighting. A real mess, frankly.
But out of that chaos, you get these two huge figures emerging, Oda Nobunaga and then Toyotomi Hideyoshi.
Exactly. And they weren't just warlords. They had, well, a vision, you could say, a vision for a unified Japan.
Ambitious projects, huge impact. They really started to shape the Japan we know.
They did. They took all these fragmented pieces and started building the foundations of a more centralized state. It was a massive shift from that decentralized daimyo free-for-all.
Okay, so let's start with Oda Nobunaga. His name kind of kicks things off, doesn't it?
It really does. And a key early moment for him was the Battle of Okahazama in 1560.
Ah, yes, Okehazama, where he took on Imagawa Yoshimoto.
Right. Yoshimoto was way more powerful heading towards Kyoto, and Nobunaga just ambushed him. A huge upset.
Really put him on the map, didn't it? Showed his audacity.
Definitely. Strategic thinking, risk-taking. It gave him the momentum to eventually march into Kyoto in 1568.
And he installed Ashikaga Yoshiaki as shogun there.
He did, but, it wasn't really about restoring the Ashikaga's power. Nobunaga had his own plans.
Which became pretty clear when he started clashing with established powers, like those big religious institutions.
Oh, yeah. And Rakuji on Mount Hei, for one. And the Ishiyama Honganji Temple in Osaka.
These weren't just temples, though, where they were like mini-states.
Exactly. They had land, wealth, even their own armies of warrior monks, major political and military forces.
And Nobunaga saw them as obstacles.
Big time. He needed undisputed authority. The conflicts were brutal. He burned down in Rakuji.
Wow. And the siege of Ishiyama Honganji took years, didn't it?
It did. 10 years, on and off. Its fall in 1580 was another huge step. Showed he wouldn't back down from anyone.
Not even the shogun he himself had appointed.
Yeah.
Yoshiaki started resisting him, too.
Yep. Tried to form coalitions against Nobunaga. Bad move.
So Nobunaga just ousted him.
In 1573, yeah. Kicked him out of Kyoto. And that's effectively the end of the Muromachi shogunate. Gone.
A really major turning point. Nobunaga's basically the top dog now, even without the title.
Pretty much. And he keeps racking up wins. Defeats the Asai and Asakura clans.
And then there's Nagashino in 1575. Against the Takeda clan.
Ah, Nagashino, famous for the guns, right?
Exactly. The Oda Tokugawa forces, using those arquebuses in ranks, against the Takeda cavalry charge.
There are those famous screens depicting it. It really shows how organized firepower could beat traditional cavalry. It wasn't just having guns, it was how they used them.
A tactical revolution, almost. Nobunaga was clearly good at adopting new tech.
Very much so. And after these victories, he needed a central base. That's when he built Azuchi Castle.
Right, in Omi. Not just a fortress, but a statement piece.
Absolutely. Huge, elaborate. A symbol of his power, located strategically.
And he wasn't just about military stuff. He got involved in the economy, too.
Yeah, that's crucial. The Rakuchi-Rakusa policies.
Free markets, basically.
Yeah.
Getting rid of the old merchant guilds control.
Encouraging commerce, especially in places like Sakai, that big trading city he brought under his control, challenging the old economic order.
And he got rid of those annoying checkpoints, the Sekisho.
Yes. Abolished tolls, repaired roads, made it easier to move goods and people around. Good for business, good for control.
Smart. Military power, political maneuvering, economic reforms. He was building something significant.
He really was, aiming for total unification. But then
Hanaji, 1582.
Yeah, betrayed by his own guy, Akechi Mitsuhide, assassinated in Kyoto right when he was planning his next big campaign against the Mori clan.
Such a sudden end, just like that.
But the unification drive didn't die with him. Enter Toyotomi Hideyoshi.
Nobunaga's successor, essentially. And he acted fast, didn't he?
Incredibly fast. He was fighting the Mori clan when he heard the news about Nobunaga.
At Takamatsu Castle.
That's the one. He makes a quick peace deal, spins his army around, marches back like lightning, and crushes Akechi Mitsuhide at Yamazaki.
Wow. Talk about decisive.
Absolutely. And then the next year, 1583, he takes out another rival, Shibata Katsui, at Shisukatake.
So he pretty quickly establishes himself as the main man.
No question. And like Nobunaga, he builds a massive castle as his base, Osaka Castle.
On the site of Ishiyama-Honganji, right? The place Nobunaga besieged for so long.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Symbolic, but also super strategic. Great access via the Yodo River for transport. Attracted merchants from Sakai, made Osaka a huge economic hub.
So Hideyoshi just continued Nobunaga's military campaigns, picked up where he left off.
Pretty much. He launched campaigns to bring the rest of Japan into line. Shikoku in 1585, under Chesokabe Motochika.
Then Kyushu, the Shimazu clan.
Okay. Yep, 1587. And the big one was defeating the Hojo clan in Odawara in the Kanto region in 1590.
That was a major holdout, wasn't it?
Huge. After Odawara fell, the remaining daimyo in the north, like Date Masamune and Tohoku, basically saw the writing on the wall and submitted.
So by 1590, Japan is essentially unified under Hideyoshi. Amazing speed.
It really was. And he solidified his position with titles from the emperor.
Like Kanpaku, Imperial Regent.
And Daijo Daijin, Grand Minister. He even got the surname Toyotomi granted by the court. Big legitimacy boost.
And to keep the peace he'd fought so hard for, he brought in new rules, like the Sobuji Rei, the peace edicts.
Right. Those were aimed at stopping the daimyo from fighting amongst themselves. He basically said, stop all private wars. If you have a beef, bring it to me.
Taking away their traditional right to feud.
Exactly. He was positioning himself as the ultimate arbitrator, centralizing conflict resolution.
And he liked grand gestures too, didn't he? Like that event at Jorakuda in Kyoto.
Oh yeah, his fancy palace. In 1588, he brought the Emperor Goyose there and had all the Meiji daimyo formally pledge loyalty right in front of him.
A serious power play, showing everyone he had imperial backing.
Absolutely. Sent a clear message. I am in charge, and the Emperor agrees.
Okay, beyond the military and symbolic stuff, what about his key domestic policies? The land surveys, the kenshi, seem really important.
Hugely important. Maybe his most lasting legacy internally. He sent officials everywhere with standardized measuring tools.
What was the main goal? Just to know how much land there was.
That, but also to know who was farming it. They created land registers, the kenchicho, linking a specific cultivator to each plot of land.
The one land, one cultivator idea.
Exactly. It cut through the old complex shun system where multiple people might have claims on the same piece of land. Now, the registered farmer was directly responsible for taxes.
Makes sense. Gave Hideyoshi a much clearer picture of the country's resources and tax base.
Totally. And it made it easier for him to move daimyo around, assign them new lands based on assessed value, really tightened his control and laid the groundwork for the later feudal system.
And what about the famous sword hunts? The Katanagari.
Right, 1588. The official reason was to stop peasant uprisings, take away their swords, bows, guns.
Keep the farmers farming, not fighting.
Pretty much. But it also really pushed forward that separation of warriors and farmers, the Hainubunri, making sure only the samurai class could really bear arms, solidifying social roles.
Which ties into his other regulations on social status, the Shinbuntusere.
Yeah, trying to fix the social order.
Oh.
Warriors, farmers, artisans, merchants. Though maybe it was less about freezing everyone in place and more about controlling the movement of samurai retainers, townspeople, and farmers.
Interesting. And linked to mobilizing labor for other projects.
Seems likely, yeah. These rules were followed by population surveys, probably to figure out how many people could be drafted for labor, especially for the upcoming Korean campaigns.
Right. And towards the end, he set up those councils, the elders and commissioners.
The Gotairush and Gobugyu, yes. 5 powerful daimyo as elders, like Tokugawa Ieyasu, meant to be like a regency council for his young son Hideyori.
And the 5 commissioners were the administrators, like Ishida Mitsunari.
Exactly. The technocrats running the day-to-day stuff. It was meant to ensure a smooth transition, but, well, it didn't quite work out that way later on.
A story for another time, perhaps. Let's shift to foreign policy. Christianity was initially tolerated, but Hideyoshi's stance changed.
It did. There was growth, but also friction, like destruction of temples and shrines. Then, in 1587, during the Kyushu campaign, he issues the edict for the expulsion of the Padres, banned missionaries.
Why the sudden change?
A mix of things. Worry about the church's growing influence, like Nagasaki potentially becoming church territory. And a big one was fear of colonization.
Seeing what Spain and Portugal were doing elsewhere, using religion as an opening.
That seems to have been a major concern. He cracked down on missionaries, confiscated land from Christian daimyo like Takayama Ukon who wouldn't convert, though initially ordinary believers weren't persecuted as harshly.
Okay, so he's pushing back against European influence, but also engaging in trade.
Yeah, he tried to suppress piracy, the Wako, and encouraged legitimate Japanese trade overseas, especially in Southeast Asia. Japanese ships became much more active there.
But the biggest foreign venture was China, through Korea.
The Korean campaigns,
Yeah.
yeah. Hugely ambitious, massively destructive.
He demanded Korea let his armies pass through to invade Ming China.
Uh-huh. And when Korea refused, he invaded twice. The Bunroku and Kicho campaigns.
But it didn't go well.
Not at all. Fierce Korean resistance on land, plus Ming China sent troops to help Korea, and the Korean Navy was incredibly effective.
Admiral Yi Sun-sin and the turtle ships.
Exactly. The Kiksen. They gave the Japanese Navy huge problems. It was a long, brutal, costly stalemate for Japan.
And ultimately, they pulled out.
Only after Shudeyoshi died in 1598. The campaigns were a massive drain on resources and manpower, weakened the Toyotomi regime back home, and created lasting bitterness with Korea and China.
A huge miscalculation, really.
In hindsight, yes, and it involved immense resources. They built that huge base, Nagoya Castle in Hizen, just for the campaigns, second only to Osaka Castle in size. Imagine, camps for over 160 daimyo there.
And the human cost. We can't forget that.
Absolutely not. Accounts from the time are harrowing. Japanese soldiers writing about starvation, disease, fighting in harsh conditions.
The devastation in Korea must have been unimaginable.
Records like the Monk Kainen's diary describe widespread destruction, massacres, people being captured and trafficked. It was horrific for the Korean people, a really dark chapter.
A stark reminder of the price of ambition. So, wrapping up this period, Nobunaga and Hideyoshi, what's the main takeaway?
They were the driving force behind unification. Nobunaga, the innovator, the breaker of old systems. Hideyoshi, the consolidator, the administrator who largely completed the job.
And their policies, especially the land surveys and social changes, really set the stage for what came next, didn't they?
Absolutely. They lay the essential groundwork for the early modern system, the Tokugawa shogunate that would follow, the centralized structures, the tax system, the social order. Much of it starts here.
But always with that shadow of the cost, particularly the Korean campaigns.
Definitely. It's a complex legacy, incredible state building, alongside brutal expansionism.
So for you listening, maybe think about this. How did these systems, the land surveys, the social controls, the centralized authority, how did they ripple outwards? What elements from this Azuchi-Momoyama period were most crucial for the long era of peace and Tokugawa rule that followed?
Yeah, how did this turbulent, creative, destructive period pave the way for the next couple of centuries of Japanese history? Something to ponder.